Yesterday produced more than 25 confirmed tornadoes.
All right. Okay, we've got houses down. This is massive. We got vehicles.
More than 250 damaging wind reports. More than 230 significant hail reports. Across Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and Oklahoma, from midday through the overnight hours, the atmosphere delivered one of the more significant severe weather outbreaks this region has seen in years. The cleanup is underway this morning, and the atmosphere is already pivoting. What is happening right now, and what happens over the next several days, represents one of the sharpest weather pattern flips of this entire spring season. Everything that made yesterday possible is being swept out, and something very different is taking its place. Let's start with today, because today is not done. A slight risk extends across the Ohio Valley and Northeast, from Cleveland and Pittsburgh through Buffalo. Between 1 and 6 this afternoon, a cluster of storms will stretch from Cleveland southward toward Lexington, Kentucky. The threats are real, but significantly lower ceiling than yesterday. 50 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts, quarter to half-dollar-sized hail. The localized peak tornado threat near Erie and Cleveland is timed around 3 to 4 this afternoon. This is not a repeat of yesterday. The energy available to the atmosphere today is substantially lower. But substantially lower than yesterday still means a legitimate slight risk event for the Ohio Valley. Have alerts active if you're in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, or Buffalo this afternoon. Simultaneously, down in Texas, a marginal to slight threat remains active. Isolated wind and hail. This is the trailing edge of the same frontal system that produced yesterday's outbreak, weakening as it moves southeast. By this evening and tonight, beneficial rain arrives across Dixie Alley. Alabama and Mississippi have been in drought conditions for weeks. The moisture wrapping around the departing system will deliver light to moderate rainfall across these states overnight and into early tomorrow. No severe weather concerns with this rain, just rain. Welcomed rain for communities that have been dry for an extended period. Tomorrow, Sunday, the atmosphere takes a very different turn, and this is where the pattern flip becomes dramatic. Cold air wraps in behind the departing system with unusual force for mid-April. Temperatures drop significantly across the Midwest and Great Lakes, and, in one of the more visually striking meteorological moments of the month, snow flurries are possible in Wisconsin and Michigan on Sunday. In mid-April, days after a significant tornado outbreak in those same states. This is what people mean when they say spring weather in the central United States is volatile. The same atmospheric machinery that allows for violent tornadoes in the warm sector can, within 48 hours, produce snow flurries on the cold side of the departing system. The temperature contrast driving all of this is extreme, and the cold air arriving Sunday is the signature of exactly that contrast. This mid-April cold snap is not a record-breaking freeze. It is not a significant agricultural threat on the scale of what we saw a couple of weeks ago. But it is a sharp and jarring temperature drop after a period of extreme warmth and atmospheric energy. If you have early season plantings in Wisconsin or Michigan, covering them Sunday would be prudent. Monday through Wednesday, a genuine break. A large high-pressure system builds across the East Coast and stretches into the central part of the country. Conditions cool down. Skies clear. The kind of weather that feels almost conspicuously quiet after the week this country has just experienced. Use Monday and Tuesday to attend to any damage from yesterday's storms, to clear debris, to check on neighbors, to take care of anything that requires calm, safe outdoor conditions. Because Thursday is coming, and the Storm Prediction Center has already issued a Day 6 slight risk for Oklahoma and Kansas for Thursday, which means forecasters have enough confidence in the setup 5 days from now to begin issuing formal risk designations. That is not a casual signal. Day 6 outlooks are issued when the atmospheric pattern is sufficiently clear and sufficiently organized that the broad threat area can be identified reliably days in advance. Here is what Thursday's setup looks like. A low-pressure system will track across North Dakota, and when a well-organized low tracks across North Dakota in late April, it creates an atmospheric configuration that the central United States knows well. Gulf moisture streams northward ahead of the low. Wind shear builds throughout the atmospheric column. The surface boundary, the warm front, lifts into the northern plains and upper Midwest, and the cold front to the southwest organizes severe weather development from Minnesota and Iowa all the way southward through Kansas and Missouri. Iowa and Nebraska are the focal point for Thursday's elevated risk zone, but the threat stretches from Minnesota all the way to Texas, All hazards on the table. Tornadoes, very large hail, damaging winds. This is a setup that carries the same broad ingredients as the events we have already watched this week. The specific positioning of the low will determine exactly which subregion sees the highest end threat on Thursday. But the broad geographic footprint of the severe weather risk is very large. The fact that the SPC is issuing formal risk designations this far in advance is itself meaningful. Day 6 severe weather outlooks are not issued speculatively. They are issued when the large-scale atmospheric pattern is clear enough and organized enough that forecasters can commit to a geographic threat area 5 days out. When Thursday's data arrives in earnest Monday and Tuesday, this outlook will very likely be upgraded and refined. But the foundation of the threat is already well established. And then Friday and Saturday. The pattern does not relent after Thursday. Friday carries the threat southward into the southern plains, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. Saturday pushes it further into the deep south. This is the same multi-day reloading pattern that has characterized the last 2 weeks. I want to take a moment to address something that has been building throughout this season and that deserves to be named directly. The frequency of severe weather events in the Midwest this spring has been genuinely unusual. Not just active, unusual. The states that have historically been considered the secondary tier of severe weather risk, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, have been targeted repeatedly this season in ways that are well above the historical norm for this part of the country. The setup on Thursday once again targets Iowa and Nebraska as the primary focal points. There is a meteorological reason for this pattern, and it is worth understanding. The jet stream this spring has consistently been positioned further north than the historical average for this time of year. When the jet stream is displaced northward, the severe weather corridor shifts with it, placing the highest energy and most favorable wind shear over the upper Midwest, rather than the traditional southern plains. This has given states like Wisconsin and Iowa a dramatically elevated tornado threat that their communities are not historically accustomed to managing. Meanwhile, Texas, which is statistically one of the most tornado-prone states in the country, has had a relatively quiet spring by its own historical standards. The Southeast, which typically sees significant severe weather activity in the spring, has been dealing primarily with drought rather than severe storms. The geographic distribution of this season's severe weather has been meaningfully tilted northward from what the historical climatology would suggest. This matters not just as a meteorological observation, it matters practically. Communities in Wisconsin and Iowa and Minnesota that are now dealing with structural damage, power outages, and ongoing storm fatigue from multiple events, these are communities that do not have the same deep cultural muscle memory around tornado preparedness that Oklahoma or Texas has built over decades. Each new event in this region tests preparedness systems, emergency management infrastructure, and individual household readiness in ways that are less routinely exercised than in traditional Tornado Alley. This is not meant to alarm. It is meant to encourage preparedness investment, both at the community level and at the household level, before Thursday arrives. Confirm that your shelter location is accessible and clear. Check that your phone alerts are configured correctly. If you are in Iowa or Nebraska or Minnesota, understand that Thursday is not a distant theoretical threat. The SPC has already flagged it with formal risk designations 5 days out. It will be on your doorstep before the weekend. Here is your clean timeline. Today, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Lexington, Erie. Slight risk. 1 to 6 p.m. active window. 50 to 70 miles per hour winds. Quarter to $half hail. Isolated tornado near Erie and Cleveland around 3 to 4 p.m. Texas. Marginal trailing threat. Tonight, beneficial drought relief rain across Alabama and Mississippi. Sunday, Wisconsin and Michigan. Cold air wraps in. Snow flurries possible. Mid-April cold snap. Cover sensitive plantings. Monday through Wednesday. Genuine quiet. High pressure builds. Use this time for cleanup and preparation. Thursday. Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota through Missouri and Kansas. Significant severe weather outbreak. All hazards. Tornadoes, very large hail, damaging winds. Day 6. Slight risk already issued for Oklahoma and Kansas. Iowa and Nebraska as primary elevated risk zone. The pattern details will sharpen daily. Watch each morning's forecast. Friday. Threat continues into the southern plains. Saturday. Severe weather potential extends into the deep south. 6 to 10 day outlook. Above normal temperatures along the east coast and southern plains. Below normal temperatures across the Rockies. We will be tracking all of this closely. See you in the next update.